Okay, this tutorial is designed to get you going using paper profiles with your software Lightroom and Photoshop. If you're going to be doing any printing, you need to download the printer profiles for the particular paper and the printer that you're going to be printing on as a way to get accurate color. You'll use the paper profiles in Lightroom and Photoshop in a procedure called soft proofing, where you are going to be able to mimic or simulate the way the print is going to look. So where do you find printer profiles? Well, if you want to print at Georgian, you need to download and get a hold of the printer profiles for the paper and for the printer that's used at the school. So I'm going to go over here to the web, and I'm in Blackboard right now. And I look at, in my organizations, we have digital photography, so click on there. And this will come up, and in the digital photography organization, which all of you should be a member of, if you go to the documents section, there are the digital photography printer profiles. Click on that. And there's two papers here. There's a Canon Luster paper and a Canvas Moab, a canvas paper, and this is going to be used with the Canon 6100 printer at the school. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to save this profile up here. I'm going to save this onto my desktop. Save that one printer profile there. I'll get the other one and also save it to my desktop. So now I've basically copied those paper profiles. So how do I make sure that they are put in the right place so that I can use them? So in the Mac environment, the best place to put your printer profile is in the library of the user. In this case, it's going to be yourself. I'm logged into my computer. Here is my name. And this is how I'm logged into my computer. And in the library folder, there is another folder called Color Sync. And in this folder, there's a Profiles folder. And this is where I need to put the paper profiles, where they need to be located so that the applications can use them. So I'll go to my desktop. And I will copy those two printer profiles, go to my name, go to library, color sync profiles, and I will paste them there. So now they are both there, right here and right here. These are the paper profiles. And now if I open Lightroom, one of the things you must remember for the paper profiles to be available, you have to quit the application. So I'm going to quit Lightroom and then come back here and restart it. And now that Lightroom has restarted, in order to work with the paper profile, I'll open up one of these files right here, and I go to the print module in Lightroom, and under print job, this is where, under color management, this is where you can choose the profile. Now you see that the profiles that I just loaded are not available yet, so I'm going to go to other. Now you can see there is a lot of different papers available that I could turn on and turn off. These are toggles. So I'll turn these other papers off. Here's the Canon Luster that I just loaded in. And here's the Moab, here's the Canvas. So I'll click OK. And now these two are the only paper profiles that are available to me in Lightroom. So I would choose one of those profiles. Okay, that's going to be the paper profile, and it will actually change the color. In order to see that, I go to the Develop module, and in the Develop module down here, in this area right down here, there is soft proofing. So I'll turn that on, and it's now going to ask me what is the profile that I want to use. In other words, what is the paper and the printer that I'm going to be using. So here I'm going to choose Canon Luster, and you should see Simulate Paper and Ink should be turned on. I've created a copy. Basically, this is a virtual copy of the file. And let's turn this back to Adobe RGB and the Canon luster, and you'll see a slight difference. So the way in which you work with this is that you make sure that your paper profile is turned on, and as you're looking through, in a sense, the filter of the paper, this is where you would make your adjustments. You make your adjusting here with the profile turned on, and then you know what you're going to get when you're printing out. So now that I've made an adjustment here, let me change the clarity here on this a little bit, and maybe change the exposure just a bit on this. Okay, so I like that. Go to the print module, make sure that this is turned on. I'm going to have perceptual turned on. Now, if I was hooked up to the actual printer, I would choose the print to printer right here and then press print. However, in most cases, what you're going to do is you're going to be working with the file, and you need to create a JPEG file that you're going to take and hand it in, and then it's going to get printed on the printer. So what you do is change here to JPEG file. Down here it's going to say print to file. You also have the opportunity now to choose the print sharpening, low, standard, high. I usually use standard. The media type is going to be glossy or matte. The glossy setting would also be for anything that's luster. The only time you would ever use the matte setting would be if you're going to be printing on truly a matte surface or on something like a watercolor paper. So that would be the way to do that. The color management, the profile here, you want to make sure that you're setting the profile. You're basically tagging the file. It's going to be, the colors are going to be optimized for that paper and that printer. So be sure that you turn this on in terms of color management, even when you're printing to the JPEG file. Just make sure that for the print job, before you send it out to be printed, be sure that you are choosing the right settings right here. You can do some tweaking here with print adjustment. I would recommend against it. The other thing you might choose to do here would be to work with your layout style. If, say, you wanted to, add a border, you can go up here to the layout. You could add some margins, for example. I'll change this to 1 inch, 1 inch here, and tab down 1 inch there, 1 inch there, and lastly 1 inch there. So now I have at least a 1 inch border. Obviously the aspect ratio is different here, so that's why these margins here would be a greater border, but top and bottom you're going to have at least a minimum of 1 inch. So that's the way in which you can set this up for an output. Twirl up the layout here, go back to the print job, and at this point in time I'm ready to create the JPEG file, print to JPEG, print to file. And now, just for clarity, I'll just go to the desktop. I'll say test JPEG to print, and I'm going to save that. So I'm saving a JPEG now, and that JPEG will be what I will take to the printer, whether it's a on-campus printer or if you were going to another place to output the print. You would then take that with you. But be sure, if you're going to be using another printer, be sure that you're going to be working with the proper paper profile if it is available. And as I have mentioned in class, for example, if you're going to be, say, outputting your work at Costco, I'll click on Other here, go back to my profiles. You can see here's Costco Glossy and Costco Matte. Click OK. Now I could choose to output that through using the printer profile for Costco. You might want to go back. You might want to do a soft proof again on that before you output it to print to file. So that's how you output a JPEG file out of Lightroom and get it set up for printing. A couple of things to point out, just another aspect which is very important here when you're outputting is to be sure that you are setting the resolution correctly. Something a lot of people make a mistake with is setting the resolution too low. Depending upon the printer, the optimum resolution may be different. So for example, for Canon printers, it's best to set it at 300. If you're outputting to an Epson printer, for example, it would be 360. So you should definitely check on that. Okay, now switching over to Photoshop, just to go through the motions here. I'm right-clicking in the library module, Edit In, and going to Photoshop CS6. If I click on this, then it's going to ask me, do I want to edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments? If you've done any adjustment to your files in Lightroom before you open it in Photoshop, be sure you do that. If you edit the original, none of the adjustments you do in Lightroom will come across into Photoshop. The copy file options, you might want to make sure that this is checked off as PSD. One thing I notice many people do is they don't change this from TIFF to PSD, and then when they go to Photoshop and then when they save, it gets saved as a TIFF file, not as a PSD file. I would highly recommend that in Photoshop, until you're ready to output, you either choose Adobe RGB or ProPhoto RGB. This is a color space that you're going to be working in. Again, as a default, if you know that you're going to be printing on a Canon printer, probably set the resolution at 300. If you know you're going to be printing on an Epson printer, then by all means choose 360. I'll leave it at 300 for now because I'm going to be going to the Canon printer at school, and I'm going to click Edit, and it will jump to Photoshop and open the file in Photoshop. So here we are in Photoshop with the image as it's come out of Lightroom. So let's imagine that we've done a lot of editing here in Photoshop, and we now want to print from Photoshop itself. Once again, we can soft proof and check to see what the color is going to look like coming out of Photoshop, and you do that in the View menu, and you choose Proof Setup, and in this case we're going to choose Custom, and under the Proof Conditions, Device to Simulate, once again all the profiles are loaded in here. As you can see, I have a lot of them, and I'm obviously looking for here's the Costco profiles right here, and here's the Canon Luster that I loaded in earlier into my system, so I'm going to choose that one. Turn on black point compensation and turn on the simulate black ink and paper color. That will, again, when you turn these off and on, you can see this is showing you a representation of what the printing is going to do. Okay, so I'm going to click OK. And just as a check, if I see that Proof Colors is turned on, the paper profile that I'll be working with is now set. And Command Y is the shortcut key if you want to toggle back and forth. So Command Y turns it off, on, off, on. So this is simulating once again the way the print is going to look, and you would be well advised to make sure that your paper profiles turned on, because then you can again adjust the colors the way you want to. You should note that when you turn on the soft proofing in Photoshop, go to View. I've got my profile set up for the Canon paper. Turn on the soft proofing. In the title bar, you'll see that this is actually turned on. It's right here in the title bar, so you know that you're in the soft proof mode. The shortcut key is Command Y. So there's off, there's on, and you can see in the title bar that comes on like that. I'm just going to close this other one here. At this point in time, you have to make a decision about which way to go as far as outputting your file to print. You have a couple of choices. You can use Photoshop to generate your JPEG file that you would send to a printer, or you can take the file back to Lightroom and then use Lightroom to output to your printer. If you're going to do the former, the first one, where you're going to be outputting directly, creating, say, a JPEG file directly out of Photoshop, one of the important aspects to do is to make sure that you don't make a mistake in making a change to your master file that you wouldn't want to do. I'm going to start this whole process by turning off the soft proofing. So I'll turn that back on to my master file, and we'll go through this step by step. So one of the problems is that you need to soft proof in Photoshop, and one thing that people make the mistake of sometimes is to overwrite or to save their master file after they have converted it to a profile. That obviously is not a good idea, because converting the profile is a destructive process. So before you do anything, make a copy of your Photoshop file, do save as, and I'm going to save this to my desktop, and I'm going to name this print file as a PSD, and I'm going to save this file, replace it, because I already did it once. And now that I have a print file, I can do my soft proofing, turn on the soft proof, same colors, and then in the edit menu, convert to profile. And here I'm going to convert it actually to the actual paper. Now this is a destructive process, so click OK. And now I would save this out as a JPEG file. So do a save as, and I'm change the file format here to JPEG. I'm going to embed the color profile for the print, and I'm going to call this my final print file .jpg. And I know that this one is going to have the right setup for the printer, so I'm going to go through this, quality maximum, output that, and now I have saved this as a print file, as a JPEG file that I can print coming out of Photoshop. Next, I want to show you how to output a JPEG file from Lightroom. So I need to open up my master file. So I'll open this up, go back to my master image file. And here we're back to the master image file. And now I'm going to go to Lightroom and look at my desktop. And here is my master image file that is saved on the desktop. You may have to re-import it if you've saved it in a different place. You may have to import your master file. Again, this is what's very important here is to make sure that you're labeling your files correctly, so you're not going to be confused as to which file you're going to be using to generate your output. So you know the master file. We didn't change the color profile of the file, because in Lightroom we're going to use Lightroom to output that file. So I'm going to choose my master file. Here's the master file right here. I'll go to the print module, and I have my layout set up, and I'm going to choose my Canon luster as the printer profile, and then print the file just like we did before. Just remember that any edits that you do in Photoshop, save the Photoshop file as a master and then re-import it into Lightroom, or make sure that that file is the one that's actually in Lightroom, and then you can output directly from that. So again, just to repeat, two ways of doing this. You can output from Photoshop, convert to profile, convert to the paper profile, and then output the JPEG. Be sure you save a print version of your master file just in case. It's a good safety. And then you can output to a JPEG file in Lightroom from your master file. But that master file will not have had any paper profile converting done to it, because you're going to rely on that inside Lightroom. But you would, going back to Photoshop, you would use the soft proofing in Photoshop in terms of your master file, just to tweak the colors so that you can see, you basically know what you're going to end up getting. So while you're doing your editing in Photoshop, you're simulating the printing. Anyway, that should take care of using printer profiles.